What can we learn from one of the greatest mega classics in metal history? Let's talk about that. Hey kids, it's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. Over my many years as a guitar teacher and touring musician, I've learned thousands of songs, and they've all taught me something that stuck with me and helped me along the way. Mastering tunes makes us better players, and that's why every guitarist should learn Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth. Hey kids, it's your good buddy, Uncle Ben. Symphony of Destruction was released all the way back in 1992 on the Countdown to Extinction record, and it quickly became a staple in their set list and a fan favorite, thanks in part to its clever songwriting, amazing solo, and sick riffs. On today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into everything that you can learn if you master this song, but you're going to get even more out of this video if you check out the extended and ad-free cut that's only available on my Patreon page at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. It could be your new favorite page on the interweb, and it very well could be a cult. And it's up to you to find out, even for the low price of $1 a month. That's going to get you access to that super extended cut of the video, as well as over 700 exclusive posts and a community of awesome people just like yourself. So don't delay, sign up today. Gear-wise for today's video, I'm going to be playing this lovely Ibanez RGR5521B that I got from the fine folks over at the Axe Palace. The Axe Palace is a really amazing guitar shop that somehow sources these like small batch custom runs through Ibanez, and they're always amazing, so be sure to check them out. And tonally, I just got to crush them, which is why I'm using my Synergy Bogner Uberschall module, and I've got that boosted out front with the MXR super badass modified overdrive. Dave Ellefson's bass playing is a big part of what makes this song so great. As we go through and talk about his big guitar parts, I'm going to be playing my Spector Euro 5-string bass here through the Fractal Audio Axe FX3. Now, let's get into it. If you hear a little pitter-patter in the background, that's the sound of a gentle Tennessee rainstorm landing on my doorstep. Song kicks off with the iconic main riff, which is based around the E Phrygian scale. Or as the old-timers call it, the Spanish minor. Well, Spanish minor. It's just like the minor scale, only instead of having a natural second, it has the more aggressive flat second, also known as the Jaws interval. That aggressive nature has made it a metal staple since the days that Rob Halford was riding around on dinosaurs. Now, it's a simple enough riff, but there's some left-hand strategies you can learn from this that'll really help your playing sound a lot cleaner. Check this out. You can see how they use a 1 finger per fret approach here, where the index finger does all the first fret stuff, middle fingers for the 2nd fret, and your ring fingers for the 3rd fret. Whenever you play the riff like that, it might seem a little bit unconventional to play that E power chord with your middle finger, but it keeps your hand from sliding around the neck and generating an accidental Tom Morello guitar solo. Part of what makes this riff work so well is the way that Dave Ellefson fills in all the gaps on bass. Check this out. One of the most important things we can learn from his playing is that real bass players don't use their fingers. They also don't use a pick all the time either. Real bass players use whatever is right for the song. I know there's a lot of argument about like fingerstyle versus pick or whatever, but in my opinion, the best bass players of all time know that you play whatever's right for that song. And in this case, I couldn't imagine anything being better than hearing that aggressive pick attack that Dave has throughout the tune. And he's just playing that open low E string with some palm muting and all the spaces of the riff. Seems pretty simple, but you don't notice how important it is until you take it away. Like, imagine the verses sounded like this. It's really simple stuff, but it adds so much to that verse part. Up next, let's talk about the pre-chorus of the song, which has some chromatic dyads, some guitar harmonies, and some really cool stuff going on with the bass. First thing we can learn from this is the power of the almighty upstroke. A lot of metal dudes, we get really focused on our downstroke speed and power and all that. And yeah, that's really good to be able to do that. But the upstroke sound is just kind of inherently different, you know? You'll notice whenever Dave plays those double stops, he always tags them with a really aggressive upstroke like that. The upstroke kind of pulls the strings away from the face of the guitar in a way that a downstroke doesn't. And you're also going to be hitting the high string slightly before the low string, which just makes it sound a little bit different than it would if you played it with all downstrokes. So Dave's part stays simple, and he plays the dyads in that same lick at the end of the phrase every time. Meanwhile, you've got Marty Friedman over here playing some harmonies on top of that lick, and you've got Dave Ellefson over there on the bass doing something really interesting. Check this out. It's going to make Marty's harmonies make more sense. So I know a lot of people's perspective is that bass just plays the lowest note of whatever the guitar is doing, and a lot of times that is true. But the reality is, bass is boss. Bass, with it being kind of in its own register, can create these kind of like implied chord progressions behind riffs in certain contexts. So for example, you'll notice during that riff, the guitar parts are just centered around E the whole time, right? It doesn't really sound like there's any chord changes going on. But what David does on the bass is to play E, G, C, and A behind that riff. With the general tonality of the vocals and the guitars, it creates kind of this implied chord progression that sounds like E minor, G major, C major, and A minor. I got a whole video on my channel about bass players that imply chord progressions behind metal riffs. Be sure to check that one out right here on my channel. Some really interesting stuff in there. I'll put a link to that down in the video description. Now, with that implied chord progression in mind, let's talk about what Marty is doing with his harmonies. Back in the day when I learned those harmonies, I just thought of it as Marty building a big harmony one layer at a time, kind of like what Kirk does at the first of Battery by Metallica. But really what Marty's doing isn't so much of adding a harmony onto Mustaine's part, it's more of supplementing the implied chord progression that Ellefson is playing on bass. Check this out. So at first he plays this, which is just a unison with Mustaine. Now this is against the E minor chord that's being implied. These notes to E minor sound out as flat third, which is a chord tone, fourth, and then back to that flat third again. Now after that, Marty's harmony moves to here. You could look at this initially as being just like a typical Iron Maiden style thirds harmony on top of Mustaine's part, right? And yeah, it is. But let's think about what those notes mean to the G chord that's being implied on the bass. It's that same third, fourth, third thing again. Okay, after this, Friedman's part goes to here. E, F, E. Now at this point, this is where Ellefson's playing C on the bass. Guess what those notes mean to C? Third, third, fourth, third. It's that same melodic theme we've been seeing here so far. So what he's doing here isn't really a guitar harmony per se, it's more of fleshing out the implied chord progression that's going on behind the guitars. It's cool stuff. Let's play the chords and the melodies up top here so you can see how those harmony licks interact with the chords. And that section ends with that chromatic walk down to E. Dave's always pulling out the chromatic stuff in his mega riffs. The cool thing you can learn from this is the power of a transition. You know, rather than just having riff A butted right up to riff B, put a little something in between them to kind of smooth out the transition. Whenever you hear this lick, as the listener, you know something new is coming up. It's kind of letting you know before it even gets there that the chorus of the song is coming in this case. Think about how lame it would have sounded if they just would have gone straight from that pre-chorus riff to the chorus. It totally doesn't work. That transition really sells those two parts working together. So next time you're putting together a tune and you're having trouble gluing two sections together, consider a transition lick like the one that we just learned. The chorus of the song has some creepy chromatics, cool guitar harmonies, and again, some interesting stuff happening with the bass. Let's check it out. So check this out. The guitar part was walking chromatically down, right? The bass part does something completely opposite of that. Watch this. This is really interesting. The guitars are moving chromatically down, the bass is moving chromatically up. This creates something that we call contrary motion. This is where you have two things moving in opposite directions at the same time. If you want to hear a classic example of this, check out Bourrée in E minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. It's a good example of it. Contrary motion is really common in classical music, but it's kind of unheard of in metal for the most part. But it creates this really unusual sound. I'm going to try putting the guitar riff down here in the second position. That way I can play the bass notes here on the bottom and you can hear how they're going in opposite directions. Isn't that crazy sounding? It's really kind of jazzy whenever you hear it in context like that. It's really unusual to hear this in metal, but the combined effect with the vocal melody over it is so cool. I always wondered what it was about that section that sounded so, I don't know, spooky and odd to my ears. That's what it is. It's the power of contrary motion. That gets even cooler sounding in the second chorus whenever Marty adds in that spooky harmony up top. So Dave's part has this chromatic line. Marty's part has this chromatic line, a minor third above it. Together, it has this really awesome sound. It's actually kind of bluesy when you hear them together like that. It's actually pretty complicated stuff, and it's definitely out of the range of the typical minor key power chord thing that we rely on so much in metal. And now we get to what I'm sure a lot of you guys tuned into this video to check out, which is Marty's incredible guitar solo. Now, as we go through this, I want to talk harmonically about some of the stuff that he's doing here, because this is what makes it interesting, and this is how you can really learn from somebody's solos rather than just learning somebody's solos. So behind the solo section, Dave is playing a simplified version of the pre-chorus of the song. Pretty meat and potato stuff, and Ellefson is over there providing that same E, G, C, A chord progression that he did in the pre-chorus. Now, the way that Marty solos over this is to effectively ignore the rhythm guitar entirely and instead play to the bass and the chord progression that it's implying. I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about Marty's soloing approach. I hear a lot of people talk about his exotic scales and Hirajoshi Japanese scales and all this jazz. And I don't think he's really a scalar player at all. He's very, very arpeggio and like leading tone based, more than thinking scalar. Honestly, he plays a lot more like a gypsy jazz player than a metal player, you know? Metal guys just kind of play to the key. Oh, we're in E, I'll play a bunch of E licks. But Friedman is always thinking about what the chord is and what chord he could be implying over it and how he can extend the harmony more. That's way more in line with players like Yoshio Stefan, Django Reinhardt, Emil Wurzler, and a bunch of other gypsy jazz fiends that you can check out. So as we go through this, I'm going to be talking about the licks that he plays and what they mean to the chord that's being implied by the bass part. This is really critical if you want to understand why certain players sound the way that they do. It's not just about learning their licks and what key they played them in. You got to look at context. Harmony is everything if you want to really understand music. The first licks that he plays are very E-centric, and this is where we're playing over the implied E minor chord. First thing you can learn from any Friedman solo is to not skimp on the sass, and that includes those big, juicy vibrats that he's got. Whenever I see people play his stuff, sometimes they'll play it like this. And that's just not gonna cut it, man. Try to really over-exaggerate the vibrato. Make it almost like a joke. Like, how much can you shake that rope as you're hitting that note, right? He really gets in there and attacks the shit out of it. That's part of his sound. If you want to get a nice wide vibrato, try hooking that thumb over the top of the neck. That way you're kind of in the manglet and stranglet position here with the left hand. And fret that note with your third finger and pile on a couple fingers behind it for extra support and leverage to really shake that rope around. If you're looking for some vibrato inspiration, try to channel the power of the Ultimate Warrior at SummerSlam. Now you're shaking a rope. So after all the vibrato fest on E there, he plays these licks. And these are taking place over the implied G chord that the bass is putting out there. There's a couple of signature Friedman-isms you can learn from right here. Now the note that he's targeting is this D note right here, which in context to G is a fifth. So that's a good chord tone to land on. You'll notice that he doesn't just play D though. He plays a note a half step behind it, C sharp, which is technically out of key. C sharp is not in the key of E minor, so he's playing a wrong note right here, but he bends it up to one that's good. This is something that he does all the time in his playing. He'll do it a few more times in this solo. Instead of playing the obvious note, play the one behind it and just yank your way up to it. Really cool sound. Same right there. He's giving us this B, which is the third of G, and he's getting there by ways of a half step below it. Next up, he plays this. Now, outside of context, that probably just sounds like E blues scale kind of stuff, right? Like some Steamy Ray Vaughan licks or something. But keep in mind, this is taking place over the C chord, okay? So whenever he bends to this B flat, it's not the raunchy flat five blues thing that we're thinking of it as. To C, that B flat is actually sounding out as a flat 7. Which is briefly making this sound kind of like a funky C7 chord. It's a really raunchy kind of bluesy sound, and him landing on E is just him landing on the third of that chord. Again, he's always thinking of playing inside of chord, not so much playing in key. That first furious lick that he plays is a great example of some implied harmony using arpeggios. Check this out. That's a real finger twister, and that's taking place over the A minor sound. Now, here's the thing about this. Whenever he plays this, The first two notes are completing that A minor chord. To A, this C note is a flat third. To A, this E note is a fifth, root flat third fifth. He's completing an A minor triad whenever he plays those notes. He also adds in this really interesting guy, the F sharp note. To A minor, that's sounding out as the interval of a 6. This is giving us the sum total of like an A minor 6 sound, which is a really common gypsy minor kind of tonality. Friedman does this all the freaking time with his playing. It's one of his like signature sounds. Minor arpeggio with a 6 in it. It's really cool. Back to E minor, and he plays those repeating licks on the top 3 strings. Notice how it gets the E minor. He also employs the 6 in here. Again, this is the C sharp note, which is giving us that minor with a 6 kind of sound. Is it out of key? Yes. Does it sound really cool, so therefore it doesn't matter that it's out of key? Also yes. Now these licks are a perfect place to learn some stuff about Marty's picking style. Now obviously I don't employ Marty's flipper hand technique. I can never get that to work right, but I do have some similar picking tendencies in that I like to use economy picking, but it's down to down only. Marty rarely ever goes up to up, but just because of the angle of the way he plays, he has to alter his physiology a lot to do up stuff. He'll do some later in the solo. Whenever the chord changes to G, he goes to this insane sequence of G major arpeggios that goes all over the neck. Check this out. It's really freaking hard to play. Let me play that a little bit more slowly here. All of these are just a G arpeggio, G, B, D. Every one of those notes is just reinforcing the chord that he's playing over at that time. You might have noticed when I was playing it at full speed, I'm using some hybrid picking there. I'm not sure if that's how Marty did it on the record, but he's no stranger to using hybrid picking as well. So maybe try that out and see if it works well for you, or if you'd just rather use your pick for all of it. The chord changes to C, and he plays this really weird kind of chromatic blues scale sequence. Check this out. And again, really leaning into that B flat note against the C chord. It's giving us that C7 tonality again. That little half step bend up to A from A flat lands right as the bass goes to the A chord behind it. So you get a lot of resolution there at the end of that lick. And there to cap the solo off, he just gives us a good old fashioned like Ace Frehley style kind of pentatonic flurry lick. That's some good old fashioned rock and roll. That one will include some consecutive upstrokes. I like to do those up, up, down. It's like up, up, pull, down. I think that's kind of the best way to attack those. It feels nice and smooth too. Awesome solo, and there's so much we can learn there about following the changes like a jazz player, and that's how you get those really unusual harmonies. It's maybe a little bit more of a complex approach, but you can't argue with the results, right? This is why we love Marty Friedman's playing. It's because he thinks that way, he plays that way, and this solo is full of great examples of it. If you want a complete note-by-note lesson on how to play that solo, step-by-step, and all the techniques that you'll need and all that jazz, be sure to check out the lesson video I put up here on my channel a few years ago. I'll put a link to that down in the video description, and I'll also put the tabs up over on the Patreon page. I'll see you there. So there you go, guys, a complete guitar and bass breakdown of a mega classic that's been haunting the airwaves for 34 years. That doesn't sound right. How old am I? But I'm sure there's another Megadeth classic that you think everybody should learn, so let me know what it is down in the comments section, and it very well might be the next installment of this series. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out the extended and ad-free cut over there on the Patreon page at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Even for just $1 a month, you're going to get access to that battle area, as well as over 700 exclusive posts containing stuff like downloadable tabs, backing tracks, bonus content, and so much more. Can't wait to see you over there. Be sure to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell every time I upload a new slice of fried gold right here on my channel. And as you go through your week, keep a good thought. Let's make the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time. I think it's pretty impossible to turn on the TV or open up your phone without just being bombarded by like the worst news in human history these days, and that can definitely be overwhelming. But I believe we can make the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time. So help out your fellow man, do something good for somebody, big or small, it all adds up to making the world a better place. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Now grab that rock guitar, start mashing some rope. Let's click it. More picking.